Behind me is the Santa Fe Depot in Temple, Texas. Most people that go through Temple today will never see it, but back in the day this was a hub of activity, with multiple trains per day stopping, releasing some passengers or freight, collecting others, and then going back along its way. Long before we could whiz past the west side of town on I-35, this was unsettled land. The Gulf Colorado and Santa Fe Railroad chose Temple for its inland operations in 1880 because it's here where the main trunk line from Galveston splits into three western branches. One headed through Fort Worth, another through Brownwood, and then another through Lubbock. By the time the Santa Fe entered the Texas Railroad game, the intensive agriculture of East Texas had already been saturated with rail service, and this was among the first infrastructure to serve the ranches of West Texas. This depot is in the Prairie Bow art style that was distinctive from the Mission Revival style often seen along the Santa Fe's network. Downstairs was the ticket hall where passengers could while away their wait, and upstairs housed the operations center that would track train movement, process telegraph transmissions, and handle the paperwork of freight transfers or car coupling happening just outside. Today it's a museum, and Amtrak serves passengers once per day in each direction. A few blocks away on the eastern edge of downtown is the Katy station, also in an iconic branded style, which arrived in 1882. It added not only competition for routes to Fort Worth, but also additional destinations in the direction of Houston and Dallas, making Temple a nexus for much of Texas's growing population. The maintenance yard just behind the station was where the bulk of the railroad's workers would be found. Clangs of metal and hisses of steam served as the beating heart of the city as heavy machinery got its tune-ups and repairs. It also served as a jumping off point for engineers, maintenance workers, conductors, and porters on their way to ensure smooth operations along the line in either direction. Many people would have a layover here, and operational realities meant that the trains would need to stop to refuel or shuffle cars and staff anyway. In the days before processed and prepackaged food, concessions were hard to come by, and those that were available were often unpleasant to eat. Think Western saloon food, not a great experience on the frontier. The Santa Fe Railroad partnered with Fred Harvey to solve this problem through a chain of what became known as Harvey houses. These were places where travelers could find a good meal with genial service timed within those train layovers. Menus across the network were coordinated out of a central office, and the processed provisions like steak and fish were carried along the same long-range supply network the trains facilitated. Partnership with local farms offered fresh goods like produce, eggs, and dairy. Back in the day, the West was still largely populated by men, drawn to the work that New Settlement offered. So the Harvey houses recruited young women between 18 and 30 years old from around the country to work the dining room and lunch counters. For many, this was their first adventure away from their families, and the Harvey houses offered a pathway for that independence. They had strict rules for attire and decorum, and the young women lived dormitory style upstairs from where they worked. A condition of their contract was that they couldn't marry during the first year, but many of those women would eventually pair up with a local, perhaps one they served regularly, and form the basis of the town's permanent population. This was hard work, often in unforgiving Texas heat, and also dangerous. There were all kinds of ways to lose a finger or mangle a limb. Out in the middle of nowhere, healthcare was sparse, and what physicians were around weren't trained to handle the catastrophic trauma caused in service of the things these machines carried. This was a problem for the company, which didn't benefit from workers not on the job. The Santa Fe solution was to establish one of the country's first employer-sponsored healthcare systems. A chunk of each paycheck would be deducted for its ongoing operations, and that recurring payment granted access for the workers and their families. The surgeons overseeing its operations carried the names Arthur Scott and Raleigh White Jr., whose clinic would evolve into the regional healthcare delivery network that today serves as the largest employer in the region. The confluence of rail lines, the military base to the west, and expertise in healthcare set Temple up to be an obvious choice for the region's Veterans Hospital. It was established during World War II, specializing in orthopedics and amputations from the Pacific Theater, not unlike the routine catastrophic surgeries of the railroad age. The railroad's impact on Temple, like many other towns its rolling stock engendered, is palpable, even long after the golden age of rail.